Okay, so going to show you how you can apply some images and CSS into a React app built with Vite. So this project, I'll just fire this up in the terminal. So we'll do an npm run dev, and we've got it running here, so let's open that up. So it looks like this, just got the basic application that's jumping around with the components in here. It's loading the courses, but obviously it's not styled in any way. There's no imagery in there. So I'm going to run through what we could do around that. So we've got our main.js, that's loading this index.css file. So when you build the application with the Vite run, the build setup, it will give you some kind of default style sheets in source here, one associated with main, one associated with app. You have got the index page itself, so you could load styles in the traditional fashion in here. If that's what the approach you wanted to take, that would work fine. You just have to be conscious that the styling is then going to be built inside of this root folder here. So generally, another way to work is to use the CSS associated with the different components and style it up that way. But just if we went to, just to explain, if you did want to create it in a kind of traditional fashion, what you'd have to do is in the public folder is create a CSS folder there, and then I could have a new file in there called main.css, and let's say I've got some rules in there like saying that all the divs have got borders around them, just as a little demo. Okay, so I've got a silly little rule in there, and then in my index page I could be touching that style sheet. So we would be going into CSS, main.css. Okay, so go out to my page, you can see it applies that styling. So you could do it that way, and that means putting the styles into the CSS. So that's perfectly valid. If you want to do that, just going to close that down now. I'll delete that. Because the thing with breaking the pages down into components is that you can put the code into components, so it makes the CSS a bit easier to manage as your application grows. So on the main.jsx, I could put some CSS in there if I wanted to. It's just been imported. I'm just going to delete that though. We'll remove that file. And then we've got, if we move up a level, down a level I should say, into app, we've got the CSS that's been loaded here along with all the components. This is a more interesting one to start with. And we've already seen how we could just add a rule in there. So let's extend this a little bit. Here is our component here that's loading these other components. So why don't I put a div on the outside of this that could act as our container element. And then maybe what we'll do is give this a class. So in React, it's best to use class name for your classes. It's one of the differences to be aware of. So if I call this container, and then if I then go to my app.css, I could create a class called container, and it suggested some rules there for me, but I'm just going to put in a background color of dark green just to illustrate the point. And then if I save that and I go back, you can see how that's been applied. So if I inspect, where does that rule live? So there's the container there. So it actually creates it on the build time as a document level style, which is fine because this is a single page application. So we don't have the external file. Right, so let's make this something a little bit more sensible. So maybe I'll put in a width there of 100%. But if I wanted it to be responsive, so I'm taking a mobile first approach here, I could put a media query in here as well. So I could say at, and let's say leave it on that, and so we could say that the container was 600, has to be 600 wide, and is centered using margin auto if we're on a desktop. So you can see it centered it there, so we can see the breakpoint kicking in. If I put it into responsive mode, we'll see that a bit better. So we've got our container here, width of 100. Once we go over 600 pixels, which is the breakpoint, it will switch and it starts to center it. Okay, so you can do your media queries in here, no problem. And so if I go out to one of the components, let's say I go to the banner here, we've got this little banner notation in there. We could be styling this up with an image. So to bring images in, they would need to go into the public folder. So in the public folder, I'll create a folder for my images. So any kind of static assets would live in there. So I've just got some images that I can bring in. There we go. So there's some images there. I'll just grab those, move those across. So just put the files into that images folder. So now I've got the images there. So if I wanted to load an image file in there, then you just do it in the normal way. But how do you set the path? Well, you just use the dot to indicate you're coming off the root, and that would look to the public folder. Then we could go to images and we can pick up banner image 1.jpg. We should give it an alt of banner, and it's suggested a class name there, but I shall leave that off. Well, let's leave it in, might be useful. Okay, we'll save that, and let's go and have a look, and we can see we've got our banner. So it's just dropping the image in. So if we want some styling specifically for that image, for this banner I should say, we could create a new CSS file. I'll call banner.css, and then I could be importing that into here. So I could say import, and we're importing what? We're importing banner.css. Okay, so where are we? Banner.css. Right, so I need to actually put something into that file. So we had a rule there for a class there for banner. So let's create that. So we'll put banner, and let's say make our image responsive. So we'll give it a width of 100% and a height of auto. Right, so I've got that path wrong, that's what's going on there, so it should be banner dot. Right, so let's fix the issue down there now. So let's go and have a look. And so as I resize, you can see the image is now responsive. Okay, so we're easily able to style that. if that's inside of a div here, just to show you the way that this works, you do need to be a little bit careful. If I went to app and let's say created a rule that, like I did before, that all divs have that border, then it applies it absolutely everywhere. So although these CSS files are associated, I'm loading them into the components, the rules that you create are global. So just be a little bit careful. You do need to follow a good naming convention. That's where you could decide to use something called modules in React. So this is where instead of just loading the styles like I've been doing here, you load a file with a module.css extension, you import it into styles, and then any styles there are scoped to that particular module. Okay, so doing this so far. Let's maybe just style up the navbar a little bit. So we've got our navbar here. We could create a new file for that, navbar.css. I could then import that in. So import the navbar.css. Now, I'm just going to take things a little bit further here because I've already got some CSS set up for this. So just place this in here. The mechanics of this I describe in another video, but it is got the menu being switched here to active so that we can create a little toggle menu. So my JSX, I will just need to just tidy things up a little bit here to match this example. Okay, so just got that in there. So it's in desktop view going to look like that, but in mobile view at the moment you can see it's not working because we need to be switching on the active class. We need to be toggling this class here in order to enable the animation to take place to create the little drop down menu. So just going to throw a little bit of JavaScript in here as relates to the navbar. So first of all, let's create a burger menu button that I'll place inside of here. Let's go. So it doesn't like, sorry, and I've jumped ahead there because I put the on click in, so we need to create that as well. So we've got a little on click event handler that we're going to call, and this is going to use a set state. Okay, so I need to load in set state, use state should say. I'll talk you through what it's going to do in a second. So we loading in the use state so that we can have a state that we can toggle between true and false. And it's going to, so this toggle menu here is going to be either true or false based on when the user clicks there, and we're going to use that in order to make the menu have a class of active or not, so it's toggling the menu class. So in our navbar, so this button here, we need to place that inside of here. Right, so there's our little toggle menu, and when we go out to here, it's doing that. So how's it doing that? We've got our nav, it's having this class here set to when it's in mobile view, if that's set to active, it's going to show that, and that toggles the class. So we're using the set state there to toggle the class between open and closed, and then using a ternary to work out what the class name, whether it should be active or whether it should be blank, and then it will switch between the two. So hopefully you can see, give you some ideas there how you can start to kind of flesh out the styling. And you could obviously add other styling for these kind of central elements. So we've got the course there in this course list here. So I could create a file in here. Let's call that course. Rename that courses. Again, we'll import that into here. Okay, so if we, what did we have? We had a class name of course list. So let's just create a rule for that. So we've got course list, and let's just put a border in there so we can see it's worked hopefully. Right, so we go to courses, and you can see it's put a border around it, so we're able to style that up. Yeah, we've got all kinds of things that we could do here because that's the course list element. It's got that div inside of it, so we could, perhaps make the rule only apply to the div inside of that, and have the border just along the bottom, and we get that kind of nice division like so. That's working happily on there as well. Similarly, you could style the footer, etc, etc. Okay, so to recap, you can load styles in right at the top if you want in the traditional manner for the index page. You can use the CSS files that you load into individual components. You have to make sure that the names are unique so that they don't kind of pollute across each other. If you wanted to, you could use the idea of these modules to abstract things away a little bit more, but even when you've got loads of components loaded in like that, that can still have the same kind of polluting issue. But this idea of just separating these classes out means your life should just become a little bit more manageable when you're styling things up. And we can be using media queries to set those different styles for the likes of a desktop. Okay, hope that gives you a little bit of guidance on, and then images. Simply just create an images folder inside the public folder, and then you can reference those from a component by using that path there. So you're saying off the root, look for the images folder, and it'll render that absolutely fine for you, as you can see there. Okay, right, thank you very much.